This is Michael Popok, Legal AF. For Donald Trump, it's like Groundhog's Day all over again. Every day he wakes up to a new nightmare related to his campaign and an incredibly shrinking electoral map, making his path back to the White House so narrow as to be almost unobtainable. And what do we have now? We've got Nikki Haley voters getting off the couch, no pun intended, 4.4 million strong to support Kamala Harris. They have a new PAC. The PAC has garnered so much interest that even Nikki Haley's lawyers have sent a cease and desist letter to the Kamala Harris voters telling them don't imply that Nikki Haley supports this. Wink, wink. And they responded to that letter, and then Nikki Haley went away. Because she truly wants to destroy Donald Trump, and she's going to allow her voters, 4.4 million, to get invited to support Kamala Harris. This new PAC, which of former Nikki Haley voters now for Kamala Harris, even has a pithy, fun little acronym. It's HV4H, HV4H, Haley Voters for Harris. It's hard to believe. Nikki Haley Voters, though, and if you hear from the PAC chairperson for this organization, he basically has said, we weren't so much for Nikki Haley as we were against Donald Trump, and we want our vote to count, and we can make a difference. Think what 4.4 million activated Nikki Haley voters in battleground states can do in this election, and for Kamala Harris to put her over the finish line and into the White House. This is what the head of this organization had to say when he was interviewed by The Guardian. Craig Schneider, the campaign director for Haley Voters for Harris PAC, in his interview said, when we cast our votes in the primaries, we weren't really voting for Nikki Haley as an active candidate. We wanted to send a message that this was not the kind of Republican Party that we wanted, and that Trump's period as the spirit bearer of the party needed to come to an end. And then they wanted to know how they could be most effective in accomplishing that. He went on to say that for those of us in this group, our feeling has been that while we may disagree with the Democratic Party on certain policy issues, the better choice to continue our opposition to Trump is by voting Democratic. Think about this. And don't think it's just appealing to independents who are voting for Nikki Haley. Here's a quote from a self-described right-wing, strict constitutional constructionist who's always voted Republican since 1972. His name is Jack Merritt, interviewed by The Guardian. He said, I am incredibly disenchanted with the polarization of the two parties, but I have to pick the side I think will be least polarizing, and I think that's Harris-Walz. And that's it. Now, look, this has garnered a lot of attention. If you go to their website, we'll put up a little copy of it here. They actually have an electoral map by battleground state to show how many Nikki Haley voters there are within each state and why they will make the difference. I mean, they're showing right now, for instance, that all of the Nikki Haley voters are above the margin of victory in the battleground states in 2020. So, for instance, in Arizona, the margin of victory for Joe Biden in 2020 was 10,457. Well, there's 110,000 Nikki Haley voters in Arizona. In Georgia, the winning margin was 11,779. But there are 77,000 Nikki Haley voters in Georgia. In Michigan, 154,000 in terms of the winning total. But there's 296,000 in Michigan. In Nevada, the winning margin was 33,000, and there's an additional 24,000 Nikki Haley voters. In North Carolina, the winning margin was 74,000, but Nikki Haley has 250,000 voters there. Similarly, in Pennsylvania, the winning margin was 80,000, but add to that potentially 158,000 new Nikki Haley voters activated for Kamala Harris. Same thing in Wisconsin. Margin was 20,000, but you could add hopefully another 76,000 to that total. And this is Donald Trump's nightmare. He dissed Nikki Haley. He insulted her. His misogynist, racist instincts and DNA came out against her, just as it came out against Kamala Harris. The same voters that saw hope for whatever they saw in Nikki Haley as a person of color and a woman are seeing similar United States dream the dream of America in Kamala Harris. And they're seeing Donald Trump as the racist, felon, misogynist, abuser of women against women's rights, reproductive rights that they always saw. And so think about this. If this 4.4 million or a lion's share of it can be activated and vote for Kamala Harris, Donald Trump's goose is cooked. His goose is cooked already. He's already circling the drain. But this is going to be Roto-Rooter. This is going to send him deep into a deep tailspin and dive. Now, I think it was smart that Nikki Haley, sort of with a wink and a nod, said, hey, don't imply that I support this. But even the PAC head for HV4H, Haley Voters for Harris, said, yeah, we sent a letter back about the cease and desist. We haven't heard from them since. Moink is a meat subscription box company on a mission to fight for the family farm. They're located in rural America, run by an 8th-generation female farmer. Their animals are raised humanely. Their employees are paid a living wage. And the quality of their product is better than anything you'll find in a store. Moink delivers grass-fed and grass-finished beef and lamb, pastured pork and chicken, and sustainable wild-caught Alaskan salmon straight to your door. Moink farmers farm like our grandparents did. And as a result, Moink meat tastes like it should, because the family farm does it better, and the Moink difference is a difference you can taste. Unlike the supermarket, Moink gives you total control over the quality and source of your food. You choose the meat delivered in every box, like ribeyes, to chicken breasts, to pork chops, to salmon fillets, and much more. Plus, you can cancel anytime. Moink is helping save rural America. I love it, and you will too. Join the Moink movement today. Shark Tank host Kevin O'Leary called Moink's bacon the best bacon he's ever tasted. And Ring doorbell founder Jamie Siminoff, he jumped at the chance to invest in Moink. Plus, they guarantee you'll say, oink, oink. I'm just so happy I got moinked. I know I do, and you will too. Keep American farming going by signing up at moinkbox.com/legalaf right now, and listeners of this show get free hot rolls in your first box. It's the best hot rolls you'll ever taste, but for a limited time. Spelled MOINK box.com/legalaf. That's moinkbox.com/legalaf. This is a real organization, and it's gaining a lot of momentum. And it's separate from things like Republicans for Harris. There's actually, and it's not just a token. It's not tokenism. It's not like putting a few people in T-shirts and put them as human props at a rally like Trump does. When he has blacks for Trump, and it's like 3 white ladies and 2 black people. Two black Americans they handed a T-shirt to. This is a real organization. So you got Republicans for Harris, including led by Denver Rigglesman, who's been on the MeidasTouch network before, formerly a member of the Freedom Caucus, ultra-right conservative, who's now running an organization and part of an organization of throwing the Republican vote for Harris, because they're looking for a home. I just spent a considerable amount of time with a close friend of mine, who's what I call a country club Republican, not MAGA, and to hear the conversation I had with this person a year ago and to what I had during the opening night of the convention last night is like 2 different people. He's now okay and gotten comfortable with Kamala Harris. He's okay with the Democratic Party, even though he's a moderate Republican. He's a never Trumper. And now he sees a place where he can safely place his vote and look his young daughter in the eye and tell her that he was on the right side of history at the time of the 2024 election. That wasn't the case, unfortunately, when President Biden was running for re-election. But now this is a new home, a new place, a new reef that everybody can come to, who wants to be against Donald Trump and safely in the form of Kamala Harris. So I think this is an amazing turn of events. And it's all caused by Donald Trump. He's got no one else to blame. He dissed Nikki Haley. He insulted Nikki Haley. He didn't go after her voters. And he left them open to fair game to be, solicited, if you will, by the Biden-Harris campaign. And they're coming over in droves. In a close election where the battleground states and the razor thin margin of victory in some of these states, every vote matters, especially in the battleground. And if we can turn 20%, 30%, 40%, 10% of what would have been Republican votes into Democratic votes like alchemy, right? If we could turn water into wine, we can turn Republican votes into Democratic votes. Kamala Harris is going to win by over 300 electoral votes. Mark it down. That's my prediction, Popok's prediction, on the 20th of August. It's going to be 300 plus electoral votes, and these razor thin margins, even for Joe Biden during COVID, are going to be expanded margins in favor of Kamala Harris. And we will be able to hear, and we'll be able to put up with no more talk about outcome dispositive fraud when her win percentages. I mean, that is the way for the American voter to pay back Donald Trump. Just make such an overwhelming performance of Kamala Harris in the battleground states by hundreds of thousands of votes per state that he can't even claim that there's enough dead people voting or enough people voting out of precinct or enough illegal aliens voting to overcome her large popular vote in each of these states and then the electoral vote that would result from that. That's what we got to do. And that's why I was so happy and so enthusiastic when I read about HV4H and that PAC and the comments that were made there. And I kind of like a little bit of a tip of the hat to Nikki Haley, because this is her ultimate payback. Her ultimate payback is she lets these organizations sort of flourish in her name, where she says, oh, you really shouldn't do that, but doesn't do anything to stop it because you can't do anything to stop it. They're not claiming that Nikki Haley supports them. They're saying they're former Nikki Haley voters that are now voting for Donald Trump, and they're allowed to do that. Even if they use her name in that. She's a public figure, and they're able to use her name, I believe, in that kind of context. So this is her ultimate payback. You know, he tried to give her the shiv during the primary. He made fun of her. He embarrassed her. He didn't pick her for vice president because that would have been a more formidable opposition if it were Trump, Nikki Haley, but it's not. He's not about bringing in a team of rivals to help run the country. You're not going to see DeSantis or Nikki Haley in his cabinet at all. You know, he vanquished them. He embarrassed them. You know, he crapped all over them, and now this is their ultimate payback. Now, DeSantis wants to have the White House one day, and he believes he can do it by being a sycophant to Donald Trump. Nikki Haley, she's always been her own person, and so she's fine with her voters voting for Kamala Harris as the first female president of the United States and get her elected as Madam President and finally break that glass ceiling that Hillary Clinton so eloquently in her own poetry, her own poignant poetry, talked about looking through the glass ceiling that she helped crack to see Kamala Harris as being sworn in as Madam President-elect. We'll continue to follow all the developments in the Trump campaign and all the backfiring of his strategy right here on the MeidasTouch Network and on Legal AF. Right, there it is. Every Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on this YouTube channel. And then help the free subscribe, get them to 3 million before a Labor Day. I think it's going to be a Labor Day event. Another prediction, another Popok predicts. And then you could pick us up on all audio podcast platforms. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting. Heary, heary, Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know, and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.